Which ancestor do you most resemble? It's a simple question. You hear it at family gatherings. Someone looks at you, squints their eyes, and says it. You have your mother's nose. You have your grandfather's eyes. You walk like your Uncle Steve. We look for these connections. We try to see the past in the faces of the present. It makes us feel like we're part of a story. A chain of people stretching back through time. And we are. But the story is much longer and much stranger than we usually think. When we ask which ancestor we resemble, we're usually thinking about the last few generations. The people in the black and white photos, the names on the family tree, but that's just the last page of a very, very long book. Every one of us is an archive, a living museum of traits, instincts, and blueprints passed down not just for hundreds of years, but for millions. So, which ancestor do you most resemble? The answer changes depending on what part of you we're talking about. You don't resemble one, you resemble all of them. You're a mosaic, a walking, talking collection of ancient solutions to ancient problems. Let's unpack that. Let's look at the different layers of who you are, starting with the most recent and working our way back into the deep past. First, there are your parents. This is the obvious answer. You get half your DNA from your mother and half from your father. That's the simple math of it. This genetic shuffle is why you might have your dad's curly hair and your mom's freckles. It's a lottery. A deck of cards is shuffled and you're dealt a hand. Some traits are dominant. Brown eyes tend to win out over blue eyes, for example. So if you got a brown eye gene from one parent and a blue eye gene from the other, you'll probably have brown eyes. But you still carry that blue eye gene. You could pass it on to your own children. This is why resemblances can be so unpredictable. You might look nothing like your parents, but be the spitting image of a great aunt you've never even met. A certain combination of genes for a specific chin shape or ear-to-head ratio just happened to line up in you the same way it did for her 2 generations earlier. It's an echo from the recent past. So, in the most immediate sense, you resemble your parents and grandparents. You are their legacy written in the code of your cells. The way you smile, the way you laugh, the shape of your hands. These are gifts from them. But let's go back a step further. Before we were individuals in a family, we were and are Homo sapiens, modern humans. There is a fundamental ancestor we all resemble, and that is the first group of anatomically modern humans who walked the earth around 200,000 to 300,000 years ago in Africa. You resemble them more than anyone in your family photo album. Think about the things that make you human. You walk on 2 legs. This is called bipedalism. It's our defining feature. It frees up our hands. It lets us see over tall grass. It's incredibly efficient for traveling long distances. Your entire skeleton is a monument to this ancestor. Your S-shaped spine that acts like a shock absorber. Your broad pelvis that supports your organs. Your long legs with strong thigh bones. Your arched feet, which are terrible for climbing trees, but perfect for walking and running. Every step you take is a testament to this ancient human. When you go for a walk, you are doing the most Homo sapiens thing imaginable. You are resembling your deep human ancestor. And what about your hands? Look at your hand. You have a long, opposable thumb. You can touch your thumb to the tip of each of your other fingers. This is the precision grip. It allows for fine, delicate work. You use it to write with a pen, to type on a keyboard, to sew a button. Our ancestors used it to make sophisticated stone tools. This hand is a piece of ancient technology we all inherited. It's a direct link to the people who figured out how to shape flint into a blade. Then there's your brain. Your brain is huge. It's 3 times larger than the brain of our closest living relative, the chimpanzee. It's also incredibly expensive to run. It uses about 20% of your body's energy, even though it only makes up about 2% of your body weight. This massive brain is the reason we can do what we do. It allows for complex language. It lets us plan for the future and remember the past. It's the source of our art, our science, our stories. Every thought you have, every sentence you speak, is powered by this inheritance. You resemble that first Homo sapiens who could tell a complex story or plan a hunt days in advance. Our capacity for cooperation, for forming huge social groups built on trust and shared ideas, is a direct result of this brain. We are all walking, talking evidence of its success. Genetically, all humans alive today are remarkably similar. We all trace our ancestry back to that founding population in Africa. The differences we see in skin color, hair texture, or body shape are incredibly recent and superficial adaptations to different environments. They represent only a tiny fraction of our genetic makeup. Under the surface, we are all cut from the same cloth. So, when you ask who you resemble, a powerful answer is the common ancestor of all living humans. You share their body plan, their brain structure, and their fundamental potential. But the story gets even more interesting. We weren't alone. For a long time, Homo sapiens shared the planet with other types of humans. The most famous of these are the Neanderthals. They lived in Europe and Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. They were robust, well adapted to the cold, and had brains just as large as ours, if not slightly larger. And we know from looking at our DNA that our ancestors didn't just live alongside them. They had children with them. Most people today with ancestry outside of Africa have about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA in their genome. It might not sound like much, but it's there. It's a ghost in our machine, and it affects us. So, in some ways, you resemble your Neanderthal ancestor. Where do we see this resemblance? Not so much in the shape of our skulls, but in the function of our bodies. Scientists have found that many of the Neanderthal genes we retain are related to our immune system. This makes perfect sense. When modern humans left Africa, they entered new lands with new diseases and new pathogens. Neanderthals had been living in those lands for millennia. Their immune systems were already adapted to fight off those local germs. By interbreeding, modern humans got a quick and dirty software update for their immune systems. It was a genetic shortcut to survival. So the next time you fight off a cold or the flu, you can thank your inner Neanderthal. Your body's ability to recognize and attack certain viruses is a direct echo of an ancestor who lived in a cave in Ice Age Europe. Other Neanderthal genes influence our skin and hair. Some genes are associated with skin pigmentation and the ability of skin cells to protect against ultraviolet radiation from the sun. Again, this makes sense. As humans moved into northern latitudes with less intense sunlight, their skin needed to adapt. Lighter skin allows for more efficient production of vitamin D. Neanderthals had already made these adaptations. We inherited some of them. So your skin tone, or how you react to the sun, might be partly influenced by these ancient relatives. This isn't just a curiosity, it shows that we are not a pure lineage. We are a hybrid species. Our family tree has branches that grew apart and then for a time grew back together. We carry the memory of these other humans inside us. There were also the Denisovans, another group of ancient humans who lived in Asia. We know much less about them, but we have their DNA from a few tiny bone fragments found in a Siberian cave. And we know that our ancestors interbred with them too. Today, people from Melanesia, like in Papua New Guinea, can have up to 5% Denisovan DNA. Some of these genes seem to help with adapting to high altitudes, like in the Himalayas. So, for some people, the ability to live and breathe comfortably in thin mountain air is a resemblance to an ancestor we barely know, a human ghost from a lost world. Let's go back further. Before Neanderthals, before Homo sapiens, there was Homo erectus. This species was a true game changer. They emerged in Africa nearly 2 million years ago and were the first of our ancestors to spread across the globe, reaching as far as China and Indonesia. Homo erectus was the ancestor you resemble every time you go for a long run or cook a meal. They were tall and slender, with long legs and short arms. Their body proportions were very similar to ours. They were built for endurance. Like some scientists believe they were persistence hunters. This means they would chase an animal for hours and hours under the hot sun, not with speed, but with stamina. They would simply run it to exhaustion. Our bodies are perfectly suited for this. We can shed heat by sweating all over our bodies, something most other animals can't do. We have long legs and springy tendons that make running incredibly efficient. If you've ever felt that runner's high, that feeling of being able to go on forever, you are tapping into a very old part of yourself. You are resembling Homo erectus, and Homo erectus probably controlled fire. This was one of the most important moments in human history. Fire provides warmth. It provides protection from predators, and most importantly, it allows us to cook our food. Cooking does amazing things. It kills parasites and bacteria. It makes food easier to chew and digest. It unlocks more calories and nutrients. Our bodies have adapted to a diet of cooked food. We have smaller teeth, smaller jaws, and a smaller gut than our earlier ancestors. We don't have the raw chewing power or the massive digestive system needed to live on uncooked plants and meat. When you light up a barbecue or turn on your stove, you are continuing a tradition that is over 1 million years old. Your very anatomy, your small mouth, and your short intestines is a direct resemblance to this fire-wielding ancestor. You need cooked food to power your big, energy-hungry brain. Fire and big brains likely evolved together. One fed the other. Before Homo erectus, things start to look a bit more different. Let's go back to around 2.5 million years ago. Here we find ancestors like Homo habilis, the handyman. You resemble this ancestor every time you use a tool. Homo habilis was one of the first of our line to consistently make and use simple stone tools. They would strike one rock against another to create a sharp edge. It seems simple, but it was a revolutionary leap. A sharp stone flake can be used to butcher a carcass, to slice through hide, or to dig up roots. Well, it opened up a whole new world of food possibilities. The ability to make a tool requires a certain kind of brain. You have to be able to see the tool inside the stone. You need the fine motor control to make it. Our hands, with their precision grip, were perfect for this. Our brains, capable of planning and executing a sequence of actions, were also essential. The part of our brain associated with language production today is in the same area as the part that activates when we make stone tools. Some think that the mental processes for making tools and for structuring language are linked. So, your ability to use a hammer or a screwdriver, and perhaps even your ability to form a sentence, is a distant echo of Homo habilis sitting by a river, carefully chipping away at a piece of flint. Let's go back even further to about 3 or 4 million years ago. We are no longer in the genus Homo. We are among the Australopithecines. The most famous of these is Lucy, a member of the species Australopithecus afarensis. Lucy was small. She had long arms and a brain about the size of a chimpanzee's. But she walked on 2 legs. We know this from her skeleton. Her pelvis and leg bones are clearly adapted for bipedalism. Yet her curved fingers and toes, and the shape of her shoulders, suggest she was still a capable tree climber. You resemble Lucy in your fundamental commitment to walking upright. That was the path our lineage took. But you also see in her the crossroads, the tension between the old world of the trees and the new world of the savanna. We chose the savanna. We gave up our ability to move easily through the branches. Look at your feet. They are stiff, with a strong arch. They are terrible for grasping. An ape can pick things up with its feet almost as well as with its hands. You can't. Your feet are for one thing walking on the ground. You resemble Lucy in that you are a biped, but you also show how far we've come. You have fully committed to the terrestrial life she was just beginning to explore. She represents the moment our ancestors stepped out of the forest and onto a new path. Every time you feel the solid ground beneath your feet, you are walking in her footsteps. Now let's take a really big leap back. Let's go back 6 or 7 million years. This is where we find the last common ancestor we share with chimpanzees. We don't have a fossil of this creature, but we can infer what it was like by looking at what humans and chimps have in common. This ancestor was likely an ape, probably about the size of a chimp, that spent time in both the trees and on the ground. As you resemble this ancestor in ways that are deep and instinctual. Think about social behavior. Humans and chimps live in complex social groups. We form alliances, we have hierarchies. We compete for status, we also show empathy and comfort each other. When you gossip with your friends, you are engaging in a form of social grooming. Primates physically groom each other to build bonds and maintain relationships. Where humans do the same thing, but with words. Our large social networks are a supercharged version of what our primate ancestors were doing. Think about your facial expressions. A smile, a frown, a look of surprise. These are largely universal across human cultures. And we share many of them with other apes. The way you might bare your teeth in an angry snarl is a very old, very primal display. The need for social contact, the pain of loneliness, the comfort of a friendly touch, these are all part of your primate inheritance. You resemble your ape ancestor in your deep-seated need to belong to a group. We are social animals to our very core, and we can go even further back. Let's go back 65 million years to the time after the dinosaurs were wiped out. Our ancestor then was a small shrew-like creature. It was a mammal. It was warm-blooded, covered in fur, and it probably scurried around at night, trying to avoid being eaten. You resemble this ancestor every time you get goosebumps. That reaction, where your hairs stand on end, is caused by tiny muscles attached to each hair follicle. For our furry ancestor, this would have fluffed up its coat, trapping more air and providing better insulation against the cold. It could also make it look bigger and more intimidating to a predator. We don't have enough body hair for it to work anymore, but the reflex is still there. It's a message from a time when our world was very different and much more dangerous. Being a mammal means you also share other fundamental traits. The fact that we give birth to live young. The fact that mothers produce milk to feed them. The powerful bond between a mother and her child. This is our legacy as mammals. The care and investment we put into our offspring is a strategy that has been wildly successful for millions of years. Let's go back hundreds of millions of years. Our ancestor was some of the first fish to crawl out of the water. You resemble that fish every time you hiccup. A hiccup is a spasm of the diaphragm, a muscle we use for breathing. Sharp intake of breath is followed by the sudden closing of the glottis in your throat. The pattern of muscle movements is very similar to how amphibians like frogs pump water across their gills. Some scientists think the hiccup is a leftover neural circuit from our guild ancestors. It's a fossil in our nervous system. And what about our bodies themselves? We have a backbone. We have 4 limbs. We have a head at one end and a tail at the other, or at least a tailbone where a tail used to be. This basic body plan, called bilateral symmetry, is incredibly old. It goes back to the first vertebrates. You resemble them in your fundamental shape. You have a left side and a right side that are mirror images of each other. It's so basic we don't even think about it, but it's one of our most ancient resemblances. We can take it all the way back to the first life on Earth. A single-celled organism floating in a primordial sea. How could you possibly resemble that? You resemble it in the most profound way of all. Every cell in your body operates on the same basic principles. It uses DNA to store information. It uses RNA to carry that information. It uses proteins to do the work. The genetic code, the language that translates a gene into a protein, is essentially universal for all life on this planet. The chemical reactions that power your cells that give you energy are ancient pathways that were perfected billions of years ago. You are an unbroken chain of successful reproduction stretching back to the dawn of life. Every ancestor you have, from your parents to that first cell, managed to do one thing: survive long enough to pass on its genes. You are the result, a 4 billion-year-old success story. So, which ancestor do you most resemble? You resemble your grandmother when you catch your reflection in a window and see her smile on your face. You resemble the first Homo sapiens when you gather with friends and tell a story, your complex brains weaving a shared reality out of words. You resemble your Neanderthal cousin when your immune system fights off an infection using ancient tools for a modern problem. You resemble Homo erectus when you cook a meal, using fire to power your oversized brain. You resemble Homo habilis when you pick up a tool, your hands and mind working together to shape the world around you. You resemble Lucy the Australopithecine with every step you take, a commitment to a life on 2 feet. You resemble a long-forgotten ape ancestor when you seek comfort in the company of others, fulfilling a deep need for social connection. You resemble a tiny nocturnal mammal when you get goosebumps in the cold. You resemble an ancient fish when you get the hiccups. And you resemble the first spark of life in the way your cells burn energy and read the genetic code that connects all living things. You don't resemble just one. You are a layered being, a walking, breathing history of life on Earth. Each ancestor has left its mark. Some are obvious, like the shape of your nose. Others are hidden deep in your cells or in your instincts. They are all there. You are a crowd, you contain multitudes, and that is a far more wondrous and profound story than simply having your grandfather's eyes.